This little table may not seem like a big project to you, but to me, it was kind of a big deal. Not only was I suffering from terrible creative block, but I wasn't feeling very well, like physically wasn't feeling very well. My name is BJ, my business is called Junked Up, and let's talk about conquering the negative and creating something beautiful. As I do with every project, the first thing is to make sure that it is clean. I'm using Durtex, which is a spray foaming cleaner. It is ammonia based and it does a really good job of degreasing and taking off all of that yucky stuff. And here's a pro tip that I want to point out is make sure that no matter what you clean your furniture with, you give it a rinse with some good, clean, plain water, because you want to make sure that there's no residue on there from the cleaner that may inhibit your paint from adhering. I'm also visually inspecting my piece, looking to see if there's any repairs that are needed or any dings that need to be filled in and sanded, and just making sure that the condition is generally overall good. Summer Crush is one of my go-to colors when I base coat a piece. I'm always going to distress a piece of furniture, and Summer Crush is a great color to peek through, and it goes with so many other different colors. And since I was going through this terrible creative block, I just decided to pick my go-to color and start with that. I'm not too worried about the coverage at this point because this is just my base coat. It's a rough coat and I'm just getting the paint on there. When I am working on smaller pieces, especially pieces that have multiple legs like chairs or this little table, I always turn it upside down because it puts the spindles or the legs at eye level for me, and it ensures that I don't miss any parts. If you are looking for any of the products that I'm using in today's video, you can go to my website, junkeduphome.com, or better yet, go visit your local DIY paint retailer. I was terribly undecided about what I was going to do with the top of this piece, and I'm so glad that in the end I decided to sand it all down. I used my very trustworthy Bosch orbital sander, started with a 60 grit, then an 80 grit, then a 120, and then I hand sanded with a 220 grit. I decided not to stain it and just to leave it the natural color, so I finished it off with 3 coats of General Finishes flat out flat, sanding with 320 in between each coat, and then doing a final sand with a 400 grit sanding sponge. If I'm being completely honest here, which you guys know I love to be completely honest and transparent, the only reason that I chose Farm Fresh was because I was working on another project and that's the paint color I was using. So I had the paint out, I had the brush out, and I didn't feel like washing out my brush, and I thought, what the heck, why not? I ended up doing about 1.5 coats of the Summer Crush and let that all dry before I added the Farm Fresh on top. Turning my project upside down once again to make sure that I didn't miss any of the legs, I decided that I really liked that little pop of orange under there. So I took a small artist brush to just fill it all in with another coat of Summer Crush, making it look intentional and not like something that I just forgot to finish. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite things to do is add little pops of unexpected color. I ended up giving my little table about 1.5 coats of the Farm Fresh as well. And when I say a half coat, what I mean is like slightly watered down, but not really, just enough water so that the paint doesn't feel sticky and not being so fussy with it. So basically just making sure that it doesn't look haphazardly painted and it just looks like I have full coverage. So after letting that Farm Fresh dry, it is time to distress it. You guys know I love a wet distress, which is really nothing more than taking a lint-free cloth that is slightly damp and rubbing it until I can get that underneath color, which in this case is Summer Crush, to come through. And this is where you get to make it personal to you. If you want a little bit of distressing, just swipe back a little bit. If you want to aggressively wet distress, then wipe back a whole lot. You just do you, boo. So I absolutely could have stopped at the wet distress, sealed my project up, and called it a day. But that ain't how I roll. So I decided to use some of the DIY paint making powder in the color Pool Party to just add a little bit of shading and a little bit of color variation and just create a little bit of like a kind of a watercolor effect. It's super subtle, but it's just enough that it makes the project not so flat. So that little artist brush that I'm using is slightly wet, and that allows me to pick up the pigment. I'm just pulling the pigment out of the cap, and then I apply it, and then I just spray the water, and that kind of activates that pigment and draws that color and lets it drip, so you get this nice kind of organic feel to it. I'm really concentrating the making powder into the nooks and the crannies. So at this point, I'm just about done with everything, and I just have to have patience and let it all dry before moving on to the final finishing. If I'm being completely honest, this is probably my favorite part of any project, is applying the clear wax. Once you hit your paint with the wax, it really wakes the whole thing up and you can see all of the fruits of your labor and you can really start to see the project come together. I think it's also like the signal to my brain that I'm done. After I finish applying a coat of clear wax, I let it dry, usually overnight. And then I come back the next morning and I buff it with a clean, soft cloth. You may see a little bit of color transfer onto your cloth. Don't panic, it is perfectly normal. I feel like it's very rare that I don't feel well and I don't get sick very often. And while I wasn't necessarily sick this time, I just didn't feel well. So I did a quick trip to the doctor and got everything checked out, and I'm on the mend and feeling much better. And it occurred to me that I spend so much time and effort on my furniture and taking care of the details that maybe I should spend a little bit more time taking care of the details of myself. As always, thanks so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.